Hi everybody, my name is Marita and I'm going to be bringing to you a video devotional titled It's All About Perspective. I'm sure that everyone out there has a story that they could tell about a painful situation in their life, whether it's a health issue or the loss of a loved one or possibly just rough trials that you've been through financially in this economic time. Maybe you've lost your home, and everyone has a story. But the situation that comes to my mind is the story about Bethany Hamilton in the movie Soul Surfer. She's a young teenager who was a surfer and lost her arm in a shark attack. And one of the things that her youth pastor had said prior to the shark attack was in a lesson where she was sharing pictures of things that were really, really up close, and they had to figure out what they were. And when they zoomed out on them, it wasn't anything like what the students thought that they were looking at. And she said, frequently, the best way to make sense of life is to step back, see a different point of view, and get some perspective. Later on in the movie, when Bethany, after she had lost her arm and she was just really battling with the what is God going to do with this now, she said to her youth pastor, it's hard to look at things that are too close. Now, some of you who might be like me, who are vision impaired, and you need something so that you can look at things a little more up close, that I understand. My grandkids are often bringing me things and saying, look, Grandma, and I'm like, I cannot see that. Let's put it out here about 4 feet, and then maybe I can see it. But it's a lot like that in other things in life. One of the things that made me think about this illustration, the other day, my husband and I went back to an area where we used to live that has some very painful memories. But one of the fond things that I remembered about living there was going into the forest and just tromping around in the forest. Now, if you have a reason to tromp in the forest that's beneficial, it makes it all the more fun. And we went up recently and did some huckleberry picking. The week before, I had gone up and picked with a friend, and it was sunny and beautiful, but the berries were really tiny and they were still sour and they weren't quite ready. 1 week made a huge difference, and we went up and were picking, but it was pouring down rain and drizzly and nasty, and the shrubbery all around where we were picking was just dripping wet. So it didn't take very long into our venture where we were just soaking wet. But it's amazing that when you take, I didn't realize how wet and cold I was because I was so focused on the hunt. And, you know, at first we were picking things that were like really tiny, and they were ripe, but they were tiny, and we're thinking, man, it's just not a very good year. But later in the day, we were finding some really good berries, and they were just perfect. And it was amazing how we could find a good area, and we would just pick and pick on this one bush, and then we'd go to another one, and then another and another. Now, I'm very ADD, and so I would pick on a bush and I would see this bush beyond, and I'm going, oh, but those berries are better looking. So I would hastily pick the bush I was on and go up and work on the other one. And one time I turned around and looked back at a bush that I thought for sure I had cleaned of everything that was ripe on there. And there were these big berries still on there. And they were like tucked under leaves and things. And I would not have seen them in the angle that I was picking at until I stepped away. I had to see them from a different perspective and kind of go at it again. Sometimes when you're in the midst of a trial, you have to back up and take a look at the whole situation before you can really step in and attack it again. One of the things that living in the area that I really did have to learn was the scripture verse, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, where it says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, but acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Now, there's certain keys of that verse that say, you know, that are very instructional. First, you have to take your eyes off of the situation. You have to get a God perspective. And that perspective is basically saying, I am too close to the situation and I can't make sense of it, God. So I am going to step back and I'm going to trust you that you have a better purpose for this than what I'm seeing. It's very painful as I'm going through it now, but I will trust you. And when I trust fully on the Lord, I will lean on, not on what I understand, but on his understanding. I will acknowledge the fact that there is no way on this earth that I could fix the situation. So I have to lean on him and acknowledge him. and acknowledge his ways, and then he will direct my paths. And it's just like picking those berries. You know, we may be willing to settle for the little tiny berries that maybe they're ripe, maybe that's good fruit. But if we totally trust in God, we step back and get a God point of view that he could direct us to the good fruit. I don't know what your situation is that you're going through today, but I would like to encourage you today to step back and get a fresh perspective. Look at it with your whole heart and decide if you are truly trusting God and leaning on his understanding and acknowledging him and letting him direct your paths in the situation. Because I guarantee you, the situation may not change that you're going through, but you will. You will change, and that could be the difference that needs to really happen.